What's going on, everybody? This is Sai from Forge Physio, and today we're going to go over the Bulgarian split squat, also known as the rear foot elevated split squat, but we're going to put a little bit of a twist. We're going to bias the back leg to really be able to get that quad pushing as we come into more knee flexion and hip extension at the same time. So typically when we would do a Bulgarian, what we would do is we'd put our back foot up, and when we come down to that bottom position, we're trying to match our shin angle on the forward leg to our torso angle. Or we really standardize the setup position to where you get your knees locked out against the surface that you're gonna put your foot on, and you would go one full step, a second step, leg goes up, you add your weight, you go about the motion. On this particular one, we're trying to bias that back leg and train the quad with your hip extended, which is a movement that we don't do all too often. But we see this a ton to where people are coming off of like any sort of orthopedic injury or some quad weaknesses and stuff like that, to where they kind of get bound up and they don't ever train into their hip extended, and the front of their entire hip gets super tight. So it's a great way for us to open up the whole leg and train the quad at the same time. So what I'm gonna do is I like to start a little bit more compact when I'm doing this at first. So if I get my knees locked out and I go a little bit over one step out and I put my left leg up. So I'm using a knee extension machine because I like how it's padded, and then it has an adjustment to where I can increase or decrease the height at which I'm setting it up to change the stretch that I'm getting. If I really want to get a stretch, I'll bring that as high as possible, and I'll move my right foot out as much as possible if I'm doing my left leg. If you don't have a knee extension machine in your gym, you could use a bench. You could use a barbell on a squat rack with a barbell pad on it, just something. I prefer something that's round, just due to how your ankle contours the surface. It feels a lot more comfortable. You can really focus on pushing, and you don't feel so limited by the actual ankle position when you go to push. So again, my left knee is locked out. I'm training my left side. I'm gonna come out a little bit over a step. I'm gonna put my left foot up, and then there I'm gonna engage my glute. So I'm trying to squeeze my left butt cheek, and then I'm gonna try to push my right shin down into that, and I'm trying to almost lean back in a sense as I bring my torso down, and I'm trying to get as deep as I can while keeping pressure through my quad, trying to keep my glute engaged, and I feel a pretty strong stretch there. My forward foot is flat, and again, I'm staying leaned back, and I'm gonna drive my foot through that pad on the way up. A lot of people will lose tension as they go to come up, meaning they stop pushing with this back leg. The whole intent of the movement is to bias that back leg. The more aggressive you get with the stretch into the hip, meaning the further the front foot goes out, I find it more difficult to really keep that back leg engaged, especially to get all the way into that bottom position and then come back to the top. So you're gonna have to play with your width, meaning how far out am I stepping? But again, I know I'm being redundant here. Really emphasize pushing that back leg into the pad. And then the last piece is if I'm facing the camera, when people who are tight into their hip get in this position, a lot of times they'll rotate to where their foot is inside their knee, and then they don't feel a whole lot of hip stretch. So you wanna make sure that when you're set up, that your knee, your hip, and your ankle are in line, so that way when you go through the movement, you're actually loading through the whole front half of that leg that's working.